Which job is a lot less fun than most people expect? Story 1. Hiking and backpacking guide. Worrying for others the whole time takes the fun away. I went on a glacier hike when I was in Iceland, and the guide seemed genuinely shocked and thrilled that my girlfriend and I were the only two people on his tour that day, and we had actually spent more than 5 minutes outdoors and were appropriately dressed. He said usually he had fairly large groups of tourists who typically had practically no outdoor experience and even less experience with cold weather. He said people often showed up in flip-flops, even though the instructions clearly said to wear sturdy hiking shoes. He also said the groups typically move extremely slow, and he never gets to take people up onto the part with the best views and cleanest-looking ice. He actually seemed really relieved we wanted to go further up, and were making great time, like it was a treat for him. He was very knowledgeable and seemed so excited to talk about the stuff he knew, and I got the impression he usually spent more time babysitting than actually sharing that knowledge. Can confirm, guided at a glacier in Alaska, it's refreshing to get able-bodied small groups sometimes. Most times it's like herding a bunch of old, partially broken cats. Downside is less tips for the trip, a minor inconvenience. First, I want to stress don't avoid coming to Alaska just because you may have less mobility than others. In fact, stop delaying and get up here. The absolute most common phrase I heard was, "I wish I did this when I was younger." It's a stunningly beautiful place, and if we can get one person to appreciate it enough to take better care of this planet, it's worth herding all the partially broken cats. Just don't schedule your new knees, hip, whatever, a month before your cruise. It's going to be a bummer for you and the other guests. Plus, without you folks, we don't have jobs. There's no way I could have afforded to go there without having the job I did. You guys made my dream possible as well. Thank you, Alaskan Cruises, for bringing your overfed, newlywed, and nearly dead. As always, a review on TripAdvisor, Google, whatever, especially with their name, is looked at by management. Legitimately, people were let go for bad reviews. Good reviews get you kudos and a much better chance of being invited back next year. Plus, we just appreciate it. It feels good to be recognized. If you're the grandma out there from Florida who shipped us baked goods, thank you. We all ate as much as we could before the mice got to it. We lost your card with a return address, but your group picture and letter is still pinned in our community cabin. Story 2. Working in a music store, musical instruments, your days are spent listening to 50 different people play 50 different riffs poorly simultaneously, as if they're all putting on their own concert. People who think playing well and playing loud are the same thing. People talk loud when they want to act smart, right? Correct! So if we play loud, people might think we're good. Person who wants to make sure you know they're very smart and you are very lucky to be in their presence. Person who goes to absurd lengths to test out drumsticks to make sure they're pitch matched without knowing how to execute any of those techniques. Extra points if they're just going to shred them to splinters in a week anyway. People who act like you're in their way because you're trying to do your job. People who assume you couldn't possibly know anything about the instruments you play and sell all day long. Side note, I mostly loved my time working in a music store, and I enjoy helping people, but the people who come in with aggressive egos and nasty attitudes are insufferable. Oh my goodness, same thing at a craft beer bar. No, I do not want to hear about every craft beer that you've ever had or the best craft beer in your town. No, I am not going to tell my boss that this bar would be so much better if X. And yes, you are vastly more knowledgeable about the craft of beer than I am. Maybe a lot of times not. Because while I like people and talking to people, I really do not care about the brewing process. But I love to learn and love listening to what you have to say if you're saying it out of a true love of the craft and not because you're trying to prove to me that you know more than I do about beer. And no, I am not working here to hear misogynistic comments like, if you wear a lower cut shirt, you'll get more tips, or much worse. That I've usually heard before. Story 3. I write adult fanfiction as a side hustle. After a certain point, it's just like writing a paper, except you have to keep thinking of different synonyms for a wiener. I'm missing the part where this isn't fun. My dude, I write erotica on commission, and my requests include Goofy from Disney and anal, incest, butt sniffing, and them being R'd by a cyborg. I'm all for creative writing, but sometimes it confuses the frick out of me. Not to kink shame. After all, without their kinks, they wouldn't be asking for custom erotica. Plus, I'm into some questionable stuff myself. But wow, people are really into a lot of stuff. Edit. A lot of you are asking, so I'll let you know how I got into it. I spent my free time wasting time on the internet, and one day I found someone wanting to commission something I knew I could write. I already write fiction. I've written novels before, unpublished, of course, so I sent them a sample of a not safe for work scene, and they liked it. We figured out the budget, they gave me the outline, and I delivered. I can't tell you any sites because it's not as simple as that. You can find people on DeviantArt or AO3. Thing is, you should be pretty established. Maybe write for free to build an audience. That's the only way you'll get consistent gigs as far as I know. You most likely won't be able to make more than some beer money with this for a while. Best thing to do is self-publish, maybe, or write for free on AO3 and Literotica. Build a following, people will request commissions. And I don't know, because a lot of people don't have the budget now that COVID hit, so self-publishing might be better. Story 4. Dog groomer. It's like working with children, but with the added danger of one of them ripping your face off if you're not careful. Very stressful. Edit. Honestly, any job working with animals. It's always seen as such a great job, but it usually involves a need for a good amount of physical strength and a strong stomach when cleaning up bodily fluids, and a hell of a lot of patience. Can't get spooked or scared of them. Another negative in dog grooming is that you see a lot of neglected dogs, and you can't really do anything about it because the owner is bringing them in for grooming, and that's considered them taking care of them. I've seen dogs that come in with mats that are like full body casts that create bruising on the skin, nails that are so ingrown that they have curled and grown in the paw pads, dogs with feces that's stuck to their rear for who knows how long, and skin is raw underneath, and they have problems using the bathroom, severe ear infections when fluid is dripping from the ears, flea and tick infestations to the point of anemia, teeth falling out from dental care being neglected. The list goes on. And that's what I've seen in corporate grooming, so I have no idea the stuff private groomers and vet groomers are seeing. Story 5. Bar bouncer. Hours of tension and boredom interrupted by moments of adrenaline-fueled fear for your life. Then some dumbwad pukes cheap booze on your shoes. I feel that, especially the boredom part. I was an EMT, which pays crap, years ago and fell into security work where I was security until people bleed, intoxicated, whatever, to also get paid crap, but be able to cover bills. It's mind-numbingly boring the majority of the time until I get to de-escalate a situation where someone feels way too entitled, Bung Wad tries something stupid, and or a brief window of very violent danger. Maybe weird, but the boredom was my least favorite part. The best were moments when I helped break up a fight and then got to see attitudes swing 180 when they need to get patched up and I'm the only medical person there. Weirdly, regular EMT equals be a jerk. Event security equals be a jerk. Event EMT equals, oops, what a joke, we're brothers, right? I worked at a video rental place back when those were a thing, with an adult room in the back. About every couple months I would have to go back and tell some creep to put his dong away and get out before we called the cops. I was generally the one to deal with it, since almost all my coworkers were women. I can just imagine what an adult specialty shop would have to deal with. Edit, just to clarify, this was a standard movie rental place, like a Blockbuster, but a smaller chain. The back room was just a small room separated by a curtain from the rest of the store, where the adult videos were kept. An arcade in an adult store would be a lot more constantly disgusting, but also more expected, since that's the whole point of them. Story 6. Librarian. It's not all books and being quiet. There are also spreadsheets. I'm a librarian too. I wouldn't say it's not fun, but it's definitely not what people think it is. If we sat around reading books all day, no books would be checked in or out. No books would be shelved, no information would be answered, no computer help, no programming would take place, etc. I love my job and am inspired by it, but it's a lot more work than people think. I don't understand why people think librarians get to sit around and read on the job. Like, do they just not understand what a job is? When they go shopping at a retail store, do they think those employees hang out and try on different outfits or play with the merchandise all day? It's baffling. I had a similar situation when I worked at a land center. People would come in and say, "So, you just get to sit around and play video games all day? This must be an awesome job." Like, dude, I am clearly sitting behind a desk with a cash register, check-in computer system, and a conspicuous lack of video games. My job is to keep the place running smoothly, so you get to play. Does it seriously look like I'm just sitting around playing games? Story 7. Game master at an escape room. It's the same repetitive script, resetting the same stuff, giving clues and hints about the same things. The patrons are often competitive families who argue, obnoxious, impatient 13-year-olds, college students who have been drinking, idiots who break stuff and touch stuff that I specifically told them not to. They never remember your initial instructions. If something gets broken during one group, you have to hurry and fix it before the next group. First time I went to an escape room, the guy had an empty booking after us, so we just hung out and chatted for a bit. He told us all about how he researched other escape rooms and got professionals to help him build a story that allowed for fun puzzles too. He told us about how he and his wife went all over the place and on eBay looking for cool props, decorations, and scenery to make the place how they wanted it. He was really excited when he talked about it and said he's looking forward to opening another. The day-to-day might be boring, but the guy 100% loved making the thing in the first place. But god dang is the pay incredible and more than makes up for it. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 8. Video games testing. I've been working in the game industry for 6 years now and teaching for 2. Testing video games is thought to be just, oh, you just play video games all day? La 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 la. But it's actually very specific and arduous. First of all, there are a bunch of testing methodologies, such as load, soak testing, white room testing, version testing, to name a few, but the most common one is functionality testing. Functionality testing is, so if I walk into that corner with the shotgun in my inventory, I can clip through the wall, but if I have my M16 in my inventory, I don't clip through. How do you go about finding something like your example, where if you walk through a wall with a certain item you clip? Is it just insane, copious trial and error? It seems like such an insanely tough job. And then since you're only one guy, within a week someone finds some game-breaking glitch fairly early on. It just seems like a tough cycle. Usually what'll happen is the tester will have it happen randomly, then try a bunch of use cases to figure out how to replicate it. Story 9. I always say the more fun it is to go somewhere, the worse it is to work there, like amusement parks and arcades. Honestly, every job that lots and lots of people really want to do sucks, mostly due to supply and demand. You're going to be treated like crap, and if you complain, you're going to be fired because you're inherently replaceable, because there's thousands of people that would love to do your job for even less money than you're making. I tried to explain this to my father when I was going to accept a bartending job at minimum wage. He said I should demand at least $15 an hour, and I told him they would laugh at me out of the bar and find some college student willing to work for less than minimum wage. The fact I would be getting minimum wage was because I knew the bartenders and the owner, so I would have started out at a higher position than just entry level. I didn't want to bartend. It was a guaranteed job with people I knew right after I graduated. It was more than I had otherwise, and I was easily replaceable for cheaper. Story 10. Acting. Actors. All the ones we see on TV and movies are the 0.0001% of incredibly lucky and talented people who manage to thrive in a hostile and overcrowded industry. And even when you're working, the actual job itself is 99% sitting on an apple crate in hot makeup, waiting for some grips to move a lighting fixture. Then you say 3 lines over and over again for an hour, and then you rap. That was my experience as an extra. I waited all day for something to do, and was given a role as a doorman, but neglected to tell me anything else. Luckily, I thought to open the door, and it made it on screen, but that was it. My mother's an accountant. From what I can tell, it's a lot of staring at large numbers, and making sure that they're all correct, and going through vast amounts of spreadsheets. Then discovering you made a mistake somewhere on the spreadsheet that was for January, so now you have to redo January, February, March, April, and May. Meanwhile, your deadline for June is in 3 hours. Story 11. Toys R Us. Not around anymore, but I'm sure this applies to other toy stores, though few that they are. It is still retail, and in this case it involves people's kids, so of course the parents are twice as entitled to have to deal with. I worked there for holiday seasons, and I loved the small store in the mall, but hated the big box stores. It was 99.9% of the parents who were the worst customers. Child-free adults, kids, and teenagers were cool though. Story 12. Video game developers, non-indie. They're notoriously overworked, especially during crunch time. The field is highly competitive too, so I imagine if you have the slightest issue with work being your entire life, it wouldn't be hard to replace you. Voice acting is also pretty brutal. Voice actors generally don't get paid very well, and they're straining their throats. Not only that, but video game developers are notorious for not getting paid what they deserve, especially relative to other peers in the computer science world. I mean, a lot of these guys, especially those who make their own game engines and stuff, are basically creating miniature worlds with realistic physics and graphics all from scratch. Obviously, a lot of big AAA titles have huge teams working on them, but some only have around 20 people. Hank Azaria from The Simpsons has his vocal cords insured. He says he routinely blows out his voice. The hardest voice for him, oddly enough, is Duffman. Story 13. I've seen this question before, and then it was Zookeeper at the top comment too. Nice. Anyways, there's this Making of Frozen 2 mini documentary. Most animators work weeks for a minute of animation of one character, if not less. At one point, they decided to leave out a piece that one person had solely been working on. Must be crappy to be part of the credits without being able to say, "This is my part." I couldn't believe it. It was even crazier to me when Sterling K. Brown recorded an entire song and it got scrapped. It's insane how much ends up on the cutting room floor for a movie to be just right. I was so psyched for the animator that did that end scene for Intro the Unknown, though. She killed it. We need to appreciate animators way more. It's a tough job we take for granted. Story 14. Managing a dog hotel. Breaking up dog fights, dogs pooping in the lobby, and the occasional awful owners. Breaking up dog fights? What kind of aircraft do you use to break up these dog fights? As someone who worked as a kennel tech, I'd often hear, "You get to play with dogs all day." No, very far from it. I've had to shovel bloody diarrhea from a dog with liver cirrhosis 7+ hours a day. I had to walk dogs consistently and then do 10-minute playtimes nonstop. I only got a 30-minute lunch and no break for the 8 hours I worked. Most people who own these businesses, in my experience, are stingy and don't care about tech's well-being most of the time. It's not a fun job. Story 15. Paleontology. You don't get to work with full dinosaur skeletons and do all kinds of awesome expeditions. You're mostly sitting at a desk looking at some pictures and logging stuff on your computer, maybe examining a fossil occasionally. If you're lucky, you get to go on a real dig and, oh my god, spend hours in the hot sun dusting off rocks. That actually sounds pretty fun. Basically sounds like school with some extra steps. I agree, if I was as into dinosaurs as much as I was when I was 6, this would be awesome. Researching dinosaurs all day and playing in the dirt sounds good. Story 16. Zookeeper. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome to be around so many amazing animals and care for them, but the smells are ridiculously, insanely foul. I have a really strong stomach and it's still tough for me. We've had some interns quit over it. I was warned about the smells when getting into the field, but thought, I volunteered at animal shelters, I know what animal stink smells like. Nope, not even close. Which smell is the worst? Are there any that don't? I'd like to add sea lions to the list. Sun-baked fish poop cakes. Story 17. Being a writer. I always thought it was my absolute dream job, but the only job I could get after college was working in a content mill as a blog writer. I used to work 70-hour weeks staring at the computer in a basement of an old bank, writing BS articles about the dangers of mold, fence cleaning, and why you need a commercial awning, and the dream turned into a nightmare. While I still write occasionally, I'm now working as a communications person, so it's a bit less heavy. Story 18. Baker. Coming into work at 3 or 4 a.m. so you can have a 6 a.m. baked good is miserable. Oh, you must love the way you smell when you go home. Nope, I go home smelling like burnt oven. A long time ago, the local schools would have grad night at Disneyland. One year, a group of rowdy boys decided they would beat up Mickey Mouse. Not only were they total buttholes, but Mickey Mouse was a girl that night. The girl got banned from Disney for 10 years. Story 19. Demolition. Everyone wants to break stuff with a sledgehammer. Everyone is tired of lifting that sledgehammer by 5 swings. Nobody wants to load the broken stuff into bags or a wheelbarrow and take it to the dumpster. I did a 2-week demo job years ago where I had to jackhammer, 75 pounds at least, a concrete slab and grind rebar into pieces. I'm in good shape and that job messed me up. Man, I thought jackhammers were a little more helpful than that. Always wanted to try one out for a job, but you just convinced me not to. Story 20. Video game tester. You aren't spending your time playing completed, fully realized games. You're playing the same level of a game over and over, seeing if there are bugs. I had a friend who got a job as a tester at Activision. They had him testing interactive Disney storybooks. I have a coworker who used to work at Activision programming those interactive Disney storybooks. He always said the work was fine, but he hated the people he worked with. Story 21. Working at a Charles Dickens fair is interesting, but not incredibly fun. It is hard to stay in character, and people get so mad when they see the Alice in Wonderland area. Yeah, we know it's not Charles Dickens, but we can't have a kids' play area in the world of Oliver Twist, okay? The kids' play area is a coal factory. Story 22. Seeing all this makes me feel like I don't want to have a job, but instead live off fish, as in catching and eating. It's my favorite thing to do, not the job of a fisherman. I hear that'll make your poop very oily and stinky. Story 23. I'm a marine biologist. I spend the last week measuring defrosted fish heads. The sea was angry that day, my friends, like an old man trying to send back soup in a deli. I got about 50 feet out, and suddenly the great beast appeared before me. I tell you, he was 10 stories high if he was a foot. Should pale death with treble dread make the ocean caves our bed, God who hears the surges roll, deign to save our suppliant soul. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.